Hello everyone and welcome to Hot Cars, and you join me today in the 2021 Audi Q8 that has been provided to me today by Glenmore Audi in Calgary, Alberta. Many thanks to them for allowing me to play with their demo model for a couple days. And after recently stepping out of the new 2021 Audi Q7, there isn't a whole lot to report here. This Q8 is what led the way to give the Q7 its refresh with the dual touchscreen setup, the mild hybrid V6, and quite a few of the styling elements that now influence everything else across the Audi range. So briefly bringing up, what is the point of the Q8? Well, it's Audi's flagship SUV, and they call it their coupe SUV, and I'm particularly not fond of this classification of vehicle. But with this one, it's a much more conservative design to the coupe aesthetic. There is a little bit of a slide in the rear hatch glass, and the second row passengers definitely don't have as much glass space as we do up front, but it's nowhere near as offensive as what we see on something like the X6 or GLE with their very intentional coupe roofline. So starting off with that in the Q8 already has me much more attracted to this vehicle than I would the BMW or the Merc. As Audi's flagship, it is strictly a two-row midsize SUV, and for the basic Q8, it only comes with the 3-litre turbocharged V6 engine. This 3-litre V6 has 335 horsepower and 359 pound-feet of torque. So unlike the Q7, there isn't a 2-litre option, and I highly doubt that many people would want the flagship premium Audi with the smaller engine. There is the S Q8 offering with the 4-litre V8, and then the hardcore RS Q8 with the same V8 but close to 600 horsepower and the same number for pound-feet of torque. After stepping out of that Q7, there isn't too much to differentiate the Q8 in terms of front row space and how it drives as a whole. So I'll actually start off talking about the second row comfort, because this is where the Q8 really excels. If you're tall like me, you will be incredibly comfy in the back of this Q8 on a long drive. There's plenty of knee room and foot room. There's a little bit of a recline in the seats, and the seats actually do slide forwards and backwards independently, which is fantastic. And they all fold down fairly flat as well, but not as flat as what you saw in the Q7. And troublingly, there isn't a way to drop those rear seats from the boot space. You can only do it with the little handle that you would use to recline the seat backwards. Only the center middle seat are you able to drop it down. But as this Q8 doesn't suffer with the same roofline as its previously mentioned competitors, the boot space is far more practical and square, so fitting longer, taller items, if you ever go on a big IKEA shop, for example, will be better fitted for this vehicle. But of course, if practicality means more to you than anything else, you wouldn't end up in this. You'd end up in the Q7. The Q8 is all about style first and really offering all of the best technology from the get-go. And I'm in the base trim of this Q8. The only options added onto it are the wireless phone charger, the tow hitch, and the black optics pack, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And moving up to the higher trim levels, you are going to get some extra benefits like dual pane glass, a heads-up unit, more leather found throughout the vehicle, and adaptive air suspension. So this is on the standard springs, and yes, it isn't as floaty as the air suspension I've experienced in other Audis, but with the 22-inch rims and only 40 millimeters of sidewall, I'm amazed how well this thing is handling the road. I am more involved in it. I am more aware of the patches and the cracks, but this isn't enough of a step down from the air suspension that I feel like I'm really missing out on anything. The Q8 was amongst the first of Audi's latest generation assault for the mild hybrid system in the V6 and V8 engines, and with the dual screen MMI Touch with the 10.1-inch screen for the front and the 8.6 below. There is a slight difference between this Q8 and the Q7 I stepped out of. Just these gray plastic buttons were integrated as black plastic, and they all felt like one piece as opposed to the individual button presses here. That's one of the few slight differences with the interior that I've noticed. Other things to address is that because the Q8 is designed as the coupe, it has frameless windows which are never going to be as refined and as well sealed as a traditional door frame, and because of that I can tell there is just a hint more road noise and wind noise coming into the cabin. You can on the higher models get the dual pane glass as I mentioned, but no matter what, you are starting off in a more flawed circumstance that you have to improve upon. So that's just something you're going to have to live with if you're looking for something like this Q8. Another thing to mention about the doors is that it has a very strange feeling door handle. Quite an odd thing to discuss in a video, I know, but if you get into the new A8, the new A6, and this, you can feel that the door doesn't open with you pulling the latch. It kind of pops out, and it's really something I can't show off in video, and it's something I really can't show off in video. You have to feel this for yourself, but essentially there's times where you pull on the latch to open, but it doesn't quite open. It only does that little pop out, and then you have to pull on the handle again to then really open the door. It's very strange. And the reason this system exists is for two primary reasons. One, these doors are very heavy. Audi's a luxury brand. They don't want you to work and put energy into opening the door. So literally just a finger pull is enough to open the door. It pops out by itself. The second reason is that with this Q8 and some of the higher end models like the A6 and the A8, they have the soft closing door mechanism. And I believe that that popping feature is what helps close the door if you're ever in the situation where the door's latched but not fully closed. Otherwise, from the view forward, the Q8 really doesn't feel any different to interact with or to drive than the Q7. When you look behind you and you see that you have quite a significant portion of a blind spot, then you feel like you're in a different vehicle. But I will say that given how wide the rear hatch glass is, this doesn't feel particularly difficult to drive. And besides the fact that you are going to have to pay more to get into the Q8 over the Q7, apart from the monetary cost, I don't feel like you're paying for much more inconvenience for the shape and the outlook in this Q8. And once more, much like the Q7, the V6's power is adequate. It's rarely startling, it's very smooth, and if you want more excitement, you're going to need to go to the SQ8 because this engine just fades into the background. It assists you when you really need that power, but otherwise, I think the throttle pedal needs a little more effort than you'd find in a BMW, let's say, and it is more geared for relaxing torque rather than outright horsepower. Another big element of the Q8's design is what Audi calls the mask, and this isn't in response of the pandemic that we're all sick of living through. This is something that Audi really did come up with when they showed off the Q8 for the first time in 2019. In this vehicle, the mask is that big blacked out portion around the grille. You can either have that mask in the black you see here, body colored, or a satin gray. When you go up to the RS Q8, that whole piece can be carbon fiber, and depending on how you spec your given vehicle, and then how you apply the mask to either contrast or flow with it, really changes the face and the overall look of the Q8. So there you go, those are all of my thoughts towards Audi's 2021 Q8. Although they haven't updated it since its launch in 2019, I really don't think they need to. And as I've said, this is the foundation of the Q8. You can get a lot more luxury options and a hell of a lot more powerful engines underneath the bonnet, but as a starting point, for such a premium experience, you'd have no idea that you're in the basic version of the Q8. I've really enjoyed driving this thing. I like being in it. For someone that's more on the practical side, I would personally own the Q7 over the Q8. But no matter what you choose, with these MLB Evo platformed Audis, they're all absolutely stunning to drive and just spend as much time in as you can. So that's been everything from me. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this review here on Hot Cars. Many thanks again have to go off to Glenmore Audi that made this review possible. So if you want to do us a favor here on Hot Cars, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. All of those wonderful things really help this channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you again soon.